The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with excitement. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for the annual Galactic Trade Consortium Technology Exposition. Each delegation brought their newest and most powerful inventions to show off to the galaxy. Dr. Park Min-jun walked slowly through the massive exhibition space. His simple gray uniform looked plain next to the colorful robes and shining armor of the other delegates. Behind him, his small team of humans pushed a cart carrying their entry. It looked like nothing more than a collection of gray metal blocks. Around them, the other species displayed weapons that could destroy entire moons. The Zephyrians had brought their new stellar hammer, a device the size of a building that could crack planets in half. The crystalline Veltar showed off reality-bending weapons that could make matter disappear with a thought. The insectoid Krixhai demonstrated swarms of killer robots that could strip a world clean in hours. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood before his delegation's massive display. His blue-scaled skin gleamed under the lights as he spoke to a crowd of impressed onlookers. His 4 arms gestured grandly at the stellar hammer behind him. "This weapon represents the pinnacle of military engineering," Kethvar announced in his deep, booming voice. "With just one shot, we can end any conflict before it begins. No enemy can stand against such power." The crowd murmured in appreciation. Several species immediately approached the Zephyrian delegates to discuss trade agreements. Everyone wanted to be friends with such a powerful empire. Trade Minister Kilthak, a tall reptilian being with green scales, nodded approvingly at each display. His multiple eyes took in every detail as he made notes on his datapad. When he reached the human section, he paused and looked confused. "Excuse me," Kilthak said to Min-jun, "but where is your technological demonstration? I only see these simple blocks." Min-jun smiled politely and gestured to the gray cubes on the cart. "This is our prototype, Minister. We call it the Builder. It's a modular construction system designed for adaptive engineering." Chilthak's eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion among his species. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. These appear to be children's toys. Surely Earth has something more advanced to show us?" Before Min-jun could answer, Admiral Kethvar approached with several other military leaders. The Zephyrian's golden eyes looked down at the human display with obvious amusement. "Is this some kind of joke?" Kethvar asked loudly. Several nearby delegates turned to listen. "We're showcasing the most advanced technology in the galaxy, and the humans bring building blocks?" A few delegates chuckled. The sound spread through the nearby crowd as more beings gathered to see what was so funny. Min-jun's colleague, Captain Lee So-young, stepped forward. Her face remained calm despite the growing laughter around them. "Perhaps we could demonstrate how the system works," she suggested quietly. "Oh, please do," said Warlord Vextar, one of Kethvar's subordinates. His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Show us how these primitive toys compare to real weapons of war." Min-jun picked up one of the gray blocks. It was about the size of his fist and seemed to be made of simple metal. "The Builder system uses adaptive molecular architecture," he began. "Each unit can connect with others to form complex structures. The design changes based on environmental needs and available resources." He placed the block on the ground. It began to glow softly and extended small connectors from its sides. Min-jun added more blocks, and they linked together automatically. Within minutes, he had built a small device that hummed with energy. "Impressive toy construction," Kethvar said dismissively. "But how does this compare to real military hardware? Can your blocks destroy a city? Can they shatter moons? Can they bend reality itself?" "Well, no," Min-jun admitted honestly. "The Builder isn't designed for destruction. It's meant to create and adapt." This statement caused an explosion of laughter from the gathered crowd. Even some of the normally polite species couldn't hide their amusement. "Create and adapt?" Kilthak repeated, his voice filled with disbelief. "Young human, We are discussing the future of galactic power. Empires are built on strength, not on playing with construction toys. Perhaps, suggested a delegate from the warlike Torvan collective, the humans would be better suited to agricultural pursuits. Leave the advanced technology to species that understand its proper use. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Minjun's team looked uncomfortable, but their leader remained calm. He carefully packed the gray blocks back onto their cart. The humans are barely evolved primates, Kethvar announced to the growing audience. They've only been in space for a few centuries. It's amusing that they think they can compete with civilizations that have conquered galaxies. Kilthok nodded in agreement. Perhaps it would be best if Earth focused on simpler pursuits. The galaxy has need for farmers and miners. Not every species can be warriors or engineers. The crowd began to disperse, having lost interest in the human display. They returned to admiring the truly impressive weapons and devices of the more advanced civilizations. Minjun and his team quietly pushed their cart toward the exit. No one tried to stop them or ask questions about their technology. The humans had been dismissed as irrelevant. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Lee So-young moved closer to Minjun. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Are you worried about what just happened in there?" she asked. "They made us look like fools in front of the entire galaxy." Minjun was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and there was something mysterious in his expression. "They'll understand soon enough," he said softly. "Sometimes, the most powerful things are the ones that look simple on the surface." Lee So-young wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his tone made her wait. As they boarded their shuttle back to Earth, she looked back at the Great Hall, where the other species continued to admire weapons designed only for destruction. She didn't know it yet, but the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about the difference between looking powerful and being truly strong. 6 months after the technology exposition, the galaxy trembled under the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Kethvar had launched what he called the Dominion Campaign, and no force seemed able to stop his advance. General Kim Hae-won stood on the observation deck of the Zephyrian flagship, watching in horror as another world fell to their weapons. The planet below had once been home to billions of beings. Now it was nothing but cooling rock and metal debris floating in space. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Admiral Kethvar said, as he joined the human general at the viewing window. "The stellar hammer makes such beautiful patterns when it cracks a world's crust." Kim Hae-won said nothing. As Earth's military observer, she had been invited to witness the Zephyrian campaign as a courtesy. Everyone understood what this really meant. Earth was being shown what would happen if they refused to surrender when their turn came. 12 star systems in 6 weeks, continued Kethvar proudly. The consortium species either join us willingly or become space dust. It's their choice. Behind them, Warlord Vex Tar approached with a datapad in his clawed hands. "The Veltar Crystal Federation has just sent word," he reported. "They're ready to discuss terms of surrender. The Krix High Hive Mind submitted this morning." Kethvar's 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Excellent. Soon the entire galaxy will acknowledge Zephyrian supremacy. We are destined to rule, Vex Tar. Our technology is superior to all others." Commander Yoon Ji-hae, the other human in their small delegation, watched quietly from a corner of the observation deck. She had been taking careful notes since their arrival 3 days ago. Her job was to study Zephyrian technology and report back to Earth's Defense Command. What she had learned both impressed and worried her. The Zephyrians had turned their expo demonstrations into real weapons of war. Their stellar hammers could indeed shatter moons with a single shot. Their phase torpedoes passed through any known shielding as if it wasn't there. Their reality scramblers could make entire fleets disappear from existence. But Yoon Ji-hae had also noticed something else. Something that might be important. "Would you like to see our latest conquest?" Kethvar asked Kim Hae-won. The Talnari homeworld put up quite a fight. It took us almost a full day to break their resistance. The massive view screen shifted to show recordings of the recent battle. Zephyrian warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons striking with devastating precision. The defending Talnari fleet fought bravely but never had a chance. Their energy shields collapsed under phase torpedo attacks. Their armor melted under stellar hammer fire. Notice the efficiency, Vextar pointed out with pride. Each weapon system is designed for maximum destruction. Our ships are built for one purpose: total victory. Yunjihei made another note on her hidden data pad. The Zephyrians were proud of their specialized weapons. But specialization could also mean weakness. Their ships were incredibly powerful, but they could only do one thing well. What happens if you need to repair battle damage? She asked quietly. Kethvar looked at her with surprise. Repair? Why would we need to repair anything? Our enemies are destroyed too quickly to cause significant damage. But if something did get through your defenses? Vextar laughed harshly. Then we build new ships. The Zephyrian industrial system can replace entire fleets within weeks. We have no need for field repairs when we have overwhelming production capacity. Vex new ships. Yunjihei nodded politely, but her mind raced. The Zephyrians had built their entire military around the idea of quick, overwhelming victories. Their weapons were powerful, but inflexible. Their ships were devastating but couldn't adapt to changing conditions. General Kim, Kethvar said formally, I believe it's time to discuss Earth's future in the new galactic order. Kim Hae-won turned from the view screen to face the Zephyrian admiral. She had been dreading this moment. The Zephyrian Empire is prepared to offer humanity a generous arrangement, Kethvar continued. Accept protectorate status, and your species will be allowed to continue existing. You'll provide agricultural products and basic manufacturing for the Empire. In return, we'll protect you from other threats. And if we refuse? Kim Hae-won asked, though she already knew the answer. Kethvar gestured toward the destroyed planet below them. Then Earth suffers the same fate as those who chose resistance over wisdom. Your choice is simple: serve willingly or be eliminated. Vextar stepped forward with another datapad. We've analyzed human military capabilities based on your expo presentation. Frankly, we're not impressed. Your builder technology might be useful for construction projects, but it has no military applications. None. 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 Those gray blocks were amusing, Kethvar agreed. But they're hardly weapons of war. What could you possibly build that could stand against the stellar hammer or phase torpedoes? Kim Hae-won considered her response carefully. Perhaps you're right, she said finally. Our technology is quite different from yours. We'd need time to consider your generous offer properly. I am 7. I am 7. Time? Kethvar seemed surprised by the request. Very well. The Zephyrian Empire can afford to be patient with such a primitive species. You have 2 weeks to make your decision. 2 weeks should be sufficient. Kim Hae-won agreed. As their shuttle prepared to depart the Zephyrian flagship, Yoon Ji-hae organized her notes into a secure data file. She had detailed information about every Zephyrian weapon system, ship design, and tactical doctrine. Did you learn anything useful? Kim Hae-won asked as they settled into their seats for the journey home. Oh yes, Yoon Ji-hae replied with a small smile. I learned that the Zephyrians have never faced an enemy that could adapt to their tactics. They're used to fighting species with rigid military thinking, just like their own. Kim Hae-won raised an eyebrow. And that's important because they've never seen what happens when you fight someone who can learn from defeat and change accordingly. Their entire strategy depends on quick, overwhelming force. But what if their enemy could survive the first attack and come back stronger? The shuttle jumped to hyperspace, carrying them back toward Earth and the most important military briefing in human history. In the emergency session of Earth's Defense Command, Kim Hae-won stood before a room full of generals, admirals, and government leaders. The holographic display showed detailed schematics of every Zephyrian weapon. "They're incredibly powerful," she reported honestly. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in raw, destructive capability. In a direct confrontation, they would destroy any conventional fleet we could build." Worried murmurs filled the room. "However," Kim Hae-won continued, "they have a critical weakness. Their entire military doctrine is based on rigid, specialized systems. They've never faced adaptive warfare, because no one has ever survived their first attack long enough to adapt." She looked around the room at the assembled leaders. "The question is, can we?" The 2-week deadline was almost over. Admiral Park Min-jun stood in the command center of Earth's orbital shipyard, watching the final preparations for humanity's greatest gamble. The former engineer had been promoted to military commander when Earth realized they needed someone who truly understood builder technology. "Final ship count?" he asked Chief Engineer Song Da-eun. 60 vessels ready for deployment," she reported. "Each one equipped with full builder integration. We've never tested this many units working together in combat conditions." Min-jun nodded. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see the human fleet preparing to depart. To anyone else, the ships would have looked unremarkable. They were simple gray vessels with smooth, modular surfaces. No impressive weapons were visible on their hulls. No decorative elements showed their power. "They look exactly like those blocks you showed at the expo," Song Da-eun observed. "That was the idea," Min-jun replied with a slight smile. "Sometimes, the best weapon is one your enemy doesn't recognize as dangerous." Captain Lee So-young's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, we're receiving the Zephyrian fleet's approach vector. They'll reach New Sol Colony in 6 hours." "Understood, Captain. Take the fleet to intercept. And remember, let them make the first move." The human fleet departed Earth's orbit in perfect formation. Their destination was the Kepler 442 system, where New Sol Colony waited for either rescue or destruction. The Zephyrians had chosen this target specifically because it was Earth's most successful off-world settlement. Destroying it would send a clear message about the cost of resistance. Admiral Kethvar stood on his flagship's bridge as the Zephyrian armada dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442. His 4 eyes immediately focused on the tactical display showing enemy positions. "Curious," he mused. "The humans actually came to fight. Their fleet is pathetically small." Warlord Vex Tar reported with satisfaction. 60 primitive vessels against our 300 advanced warships. This will be over quickly." 1. Kethvar studied the human formation through the view screen. Their ships looked even more primitive than he had expected. The same gray, blocky design as those toys from the exposition. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. Captain Lee So-young's face appeared on the Zephyrian bridge display. She looked calm and professional, showing no sign of fear despite facing impossible odds. "Captain," Kethvar said formally, "I am offering you one final chance to surrender. Your tiny fleet cannot possibly stand against Zephyrian might. Order your ships to stand down, and your colony will be spared." "We appreciate the offer, Admiral," Lee So-young replied politely, "but we must respectfully pass." Kethvar's eyes widened with surprise. "You're choosing to fight? Against these odds?" "Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when the odds look bad." "Foolish primitives," Vex Tar muttered. Kethvar closed the communication channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the attack. Use the stellar hammers first. Let's end this quickly." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with devastating precision. Their stellar hammers sent beams of destructive energy across space, each one powerful enough to crack a moon. The first wave of human ships disappeared in brilliant explosions. "Direct hits on 20 enemy vessels," reported the Zephyrian tactical officer. "All targets destroyed." Kethvar nodded with satisfaction. Continue firing. Phase torpedoes next. Show them the futility of resistance. The phase torpedoes passed through space like ghosts, ignoring human shields and armor as if they weren't there. Another 15 human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Excellent, Vextar said with obvious pleasure. At this rate, the battle will be over within minutes. On the human flagship, Songda-un watched the tactical display with intense concentration. Each destroyed ship sent detailed information about the Zephyrian weapons to the central database before being destroyed. Pattern recognition is working, she reported to Minjun. The destroyed ships transmitted complete analysis of enemy weapons before losing hull integrity. Good. Begin adaptive reconstruction. What happened next had never been seen in the history of galactic warfare. The debris from the destroyed human ships began to move. Instead of floating uselessly through space, the wreckage flowed together like liquid metal. The gray builder modules had survived the destruction of their host vessels and were now following their core programming: adapt and rebuild. What in the void is that? Vextar demanded, as he watched the impossible sight on his tactical display. The floating debris was forming new ships, but these weren't copies of the original human vessels. They were something new, something that had learned from the attacks that destroyed their predecessors. When the first reconstructed ship emerged from the rebuilding process, it looked different. The hull had a crystalline surface designed to deflect stellar hammer energy. Additional armor protected vital systems from phase torpedo penetration. Impossible, Kethvar whispered. Ships don't rebuild themselves in the middle of battle. But impossible or not, it was happening all around them. Every human vessel that the Zephyrians destroyed reformed into something stronger and better protected. With each successive wave of attacks, the human ships became more resistant to Zephyrian weapons. Sir, the tactical officer reported with growing concern, our weapons are becoming less effective. The enemy ships are adapting to our attack patterns. Songda-un coordinated the adaptive process from her command ship. The central computer processed data from every attack, every destroyed vessel, every successful defense. Within minutes, that information spread to the entire human fleet. A human ship destroyed by a stellar hammer would rebuild with energy-dispersing armor. A vessel penetrated by phase torpedoes would reform with quantum-resistant shielding. Each lesson learned was shared instantly with every other ship in the fleet. This is scientifically impossible, Vextar insisted, as he watched his weapons become increasingly useless. Matter doesn't behave this way. But Kethvar was beginning to understand. Those blocks at the exposition, he said slowly. They called it adaptive construction. We thought they were toys. Sir, what are your orders? The weapons officer asked desperately. Kethvar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His mighty fleet, which had conquered 12 star systems in 6 weeks, was being defeated by an enemy that learned from every attack. The Zephyrian weapons that had seemed so powerful now felt clumsy and predictable. Fall back, he ordered quietly. Sir, Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. We still outnumber them 5-1. Fall back, Kethvar roared. We need time to analyze this new threat. As the Zephyrian fleet retreated in confusion, Lee So-young opened a communication channel to New Sol Colony. This is Captain Lee, she announced. The colony is secure. Repeat, New Sol is secure. In the command center, Min Jun watched the enemy fleet jump to hyperspace in full retreat. For the first time in galactic history, the mighty Zephyrian Empire had been defeated in open battle. Send a message to Consortium headquarters, he ordered. Tell them what happened here today. Songda-un smiled as she prepared the transmission. What should I say? Tell them the truth. Sometimes the most powerful weapons are the ones that can learn. 2. The news of Zephyrian defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in centuries, the unstoppable empire had been forced to retreat. On 100 conquered worlds, oppressed species began to whisper of hope. President Cho Yun-soo sat in Earth's Emergency Council chamber, reading reports from across the galaxy. Each message brought news of rebellions breaking out in former Zephyrian territory. The Talnari have declared independence, she announced to the assembled ministers. The Veltar Crystal Federation is demanding the return of their stolen colonies. Even the Krix High Hive Mind is refusing to send tribute to Zephyrian space stations. Commander Yoon Ji-hae, now leading Earth's Engineering Corps, studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The Zephyrians won't accept these rebellions quietly. They're probably developing new weapons right now. Her prediction proved accurate. Deep in Zephyrian space, Admiral Kethvar stood before his empire's greatest scientists and weapons designers. His 4 eyes burned with rage as he addressed the assembled experts. The humans embarrassed us with their adaptive technology, he declared. I want weapons that can prevent their ships from rebuilding. I want devices that can stop molecular reconstruction. I want the power to end this threat permanently. The chief scientist, an elderly Zephyrian named Kiex Val, bowed respectfully. Admiral, we've been working around the clock since your return. We believe we've found solutions. The holographic display showed new weapon designs unlike anything the Empire had built before. Introducing the Nova Disruptor, Kexval explained proudly. This device creates quantum interference patterns that prevent molecular bonds from reforming. Human ships hit by this weapon will be unable to rebuild. Kethvar studied the plans with growing excitement. And this other device? The Reality Scrambler Mark II. Far more powerful than our previous version. This weapon doesn't just destroy matter, it prevents it from existing in the same dimensional space. Even if the humans somehow survive the initial attack, their builder blocks will be scattered across multiple realities. Warlord Vextar, who had been growing more ambitious since the defeat at New Sol, stepped forward. Admiral, perhaps we should consider a more strategic approach. Pull back our forces, consolidate our remaining territory, and... Absolutely not. Kethvar's voice echoed through the chamber. The Zephyrian Empire does not retreat. We are destined to rule this galaxy, and I will not let primitive humans stand in our way. Vextar's eyes flashed with anger, but he said nothing more. However, several other military leaders nodded slightly in his direction. The defeat at New Sol had shaken confidence in Kethvar's leadership. Meanwhile, in the Helix Nebula mining colonies, human engineering teams worked frantically to prepare for the next battle. Systems engineer Lim Young-ho directed the installation of new builder configurations throughout the fleet. The quantum resonance patterns are stable, he reported to Commander Yoon Ji-hae. But I'm worried about what the Zephyrians might try next. They're not stupid. They'll have learned from our last encounter. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Yoon Ji-hae replied mysteriously. Sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to let them think they've solved your puzzle. 3 days later, the Zephyrian fleet arrived at the Helix Nebula in overwhelming force. Kethvar had brought everything 500 ships, armed with the new Nova Disruptors and Reality Scramblers. This time will be different, he announced to his fleet. Today, we reclaim Zephyrian dominance. The human fleet moved to intercept, but they seemed smaller than before. Only 40 ships rose to meet the Zephyrian armada. They're either very brave or very foolish, Vextar observed. Perhaps they think their adaptive technology will save them again. Kethvar's smile was cold and confident. They're about to learn that evolution has limits. The battle began with the new Zephyrian weapons firing in perfect coordination. Nova Disruptors sent waves of quantum interference across space, designed to prevent any molecular reconstruction. Reality Scramblers tore holes in dimensional space, scattering matter across multiple realities. The first wave of human ships exploded exactly as expected. But then, something unprecedented happened. Or rather, something unprecedented didn't happen. Sir. The tactical officer reported with growing confusion. The human ships aren't rebuilding. Our new weapons appear to be working perfectly. Kethvar watched with satisfaction as more human vessels were destroyed without any signs of adaptive reconstruction. Finally, continue the attack. Show them the price of defying the Empire. But Lim Young-ho, coordinating from the human flagship, was implementing something the Zephyrians hadn't expected. Instead of individual ships adapting, the entire human fleet was sharing information in real time. Activate Network Protocol 7. He ordered calmly. Suddenly, instead of single ships adapting to attacks, the entire human fleet began changing as one. Information from every destroyed vessel instantly transferred to every remaining ship. When one human vessel learned to counter a Nova disruptor, all of them immediately developed the same defense. What's happening? Vextar demanded as he watched the human fleet suddenly become immune to their new weapons. The Nova disruptors worked perfectly 5 minutes ago. They're sharing data, Kexval realized with growing horror. The entire fleet is learning as a single organism. Each ship that survives an attack teaches the others how to resist it. The human fleet had become something unprecedented in galactic warfare, a collective intelligence that grew stronger with each attack. Within minutes, ships that had been helpless against Nova disruptors were deflecting them harmlessly. Vessels that had been scattered by reality scramblers were phasing back into normal space unharmed. This is impossible, Kethvar roared. No technology can adapt this quickly. But impossible or not, it was happening. The human fleet was learning faster than the Zephyrians could adjust their attacks. Every weapon that had seemed so promising in testing became useless within minutes of deployment. Then the unthinkable happened. In the middle of the battle, Warlord Vextar's ship began pulling away from the main Zephyrian formation. Vextar, what are you doing? Kethvar demanded over the communication system. Preserving what's left of our fleet. Vextar replied coldly. You've led us into a disaster, Kethvar. The Empire deserves better leadership. Nearly a third of the Zephyrian fleet followed Vextar as he abandoned the battle. The remaining ships, caught between human attacks and internal rebellion, suffered devastating losses. Admiral, the communication officer reported desperately. We're receiving surrender requests from 17 different star systems. The rebellions are spreading faster than we can respond. Kethvar watched his empire crumble in real time. On the tactical display, conquered worlds were declaring independence, one after another. His fleet was retreating in chaos. His own officers were abandoning their posts. As the broken Zephyrian fleet limped away from the Helix Nebula, President Cho Yun-soo prepared to address the galaxy. She stood before the communication array that would broadcast her message to every inhabited system. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice calm and reassuring. Earth does not seek conquest or domination. We seek only peace and the right of all species to determine their own destiny. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To those who have suffered under oppression, we offer our aid in rebuilding. To those who have lost hope, we offer our friendship. And to those who still choose the path of conquest, we offer this warning. The age of empires built on fear and destruction is ending. On his damaged flagship, Kethvar sat alone in his command chamber. Around him, the galaxy he had dreamed of ruling was slipping away. For the first time in his life, the proud admiral faced the possibility that the Zephyrian Empire might not be destined for greatness after all. The humans had done more than defeat his fleet. They had shown the galaxy that there was another way. A way built on cooperation instead of conquest. On learning instead of destroying. And slowly, across hundreds of worlds, that message was taking root. 6 months had passed since the collapse of the Zephyrian Empire, and the galaxy was in chaos. Ambassador Park Min-jun walked through the rebuilt halls of Nexus Prime, where desperate representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to discuss the future. The former engineer, who had once been mocked for his simple gray blocks, now served as Earth's chief diplomat. The irony wasn't lost on him as he prepared to address the same species that had laughed at humanity's primitive technology. "The situation reports, Ambassador." His aide handed him a datapad filled with disturbing information. Over 200 worlds were struggling to survive without the infrastructure that the Zephyrian Empire had controlled. Food distribution networks had collapsed. Medical supplies were running short. Some planets were experiencing civil wars, as different groups fought over limited resources. Director Song Da-eun, now heading the Galactic Reconstruction Initiative, approached with her own set of reports. "The Talnari homeworld is requesting immediate assistance," she informed him. "Their population is facing starvation after the Zephyrian food processing centers were destroyed in the rebellion. And the Veltar Crystal Federation? Their mining colonies are in complete disorder. Without the Empire's management systems, they can't coordinate resource extraction or transportation." Minjun nodded sadly. The Zephyrian Empire had been brutal and oppressive, but it had also provided a structure that many species had depended on for centuries. Now that it was gone, millions of beings were paying the price for freedom. In the main assembly hall, former Trade Minister Kilthok stood before a crowd of desperate delegates. The proud reptilian, who had once dismissed human technology, now looked tired and defeated. "My fellow beings," he began, his multiple eyes scanning the crowd. "We face an unprecedented crisis. The old order is gone, but we have nothing to replace it with. Our people are suffering, and we have no central authority to coordinate relief efforts." Angry voices rose from the crowd. Representatives blamed each other for the chaos. Some called for the formation of new empires. Others demanded isolation from galactic affairs entirely. "What we need," declared a delegate from the militant Torvan collective, "is strong leadership. The weak cannot be allowed to drag down the strong. The strong are the ones who created this mess," shouted back a representative from the peaceful Harnali coalition. "We need cooperation, not more conquest." The debate grew more heated as old grievances and territorial disputes surfaced. Minjun watched from the gallery, waiting for the right moment to speak. That moment came when Kilthok raised his voice above the arguing crowd. "Perhaps," he said reluctantly, "we should hear from the humans. They seem to be the only ones offering practical solutions, instead of blame." The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to Minjun as he made his way to the speaking platform. He remembered the last time he had stood before a galactic audience, when they had laughed at his builder prototype. "Friends," he began simply, "we understand your frustration. Change is always difficult, especially when it comes suddenly. But crisis can also be opportunity if we're willing to work together." A skeptical murmur ran through the crowd. Many species still found it hard to accept advice from the primitive humans. "Earth proposes the formation of a cooperative reconstruction protocol," Minjun continued. "Not a new empire or central authority, but a voluntary network of mutual aid and shared resources." He gestured, and a holographic display showed the proposal's details. "We're offering builder technology freely to any world that needs it. Not weapons, but tools. Atmospheric processors to restore damaged environments. Food synthesizers to end hunger. Medical systems adapted to each species' biology." "And what do you want in return?" asked a suspicious delegate from the former Zephyrian territories. "Nothing," Minjun replied honestly. "We believe that helping others ultimately helps everyone." The hall erupted in confused discussion. Many species couldn't understand the concept of aid without conquest or control. Kilthak stood up slowly. "I must confess something to this assembly," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "My world is dying. Our agricultural systems failed when the Empire fell, and we're too proud to ask for help. But pride doesn't feed hungry children." He looked directly at Minjun. We mocked your technology at the exposition. We called you primitive and weak. I was wrong, and I publicly apologize for my arrogance." This admission sent shockwaves through the assembly. If someone as prominent as Kilthak could admit error and ask for aid, perhaps others could as well. Captain Lee So-young, now leading human peacekeeping forces, coordinated the first major relief operation. Her ships arrived at the struggling Kilthak homeworld, carrying not weapons, but hope. "Atmospheric processors online," reported one of her engineers as builder technology began repairing the damaged ecosystem. "Food synthesis systems are adapting to local dietary requirements. Medical facilities should be operational within hours." What amazed the local population was how the human technology adapted to their specific needs. The builder systems studied their biology, their environment, their culture, and created solutions tailored perfectly to their situation. On other worlds, similar scenes played out as human aid workers brought adaptive reconstruction technology to species that had never imagined such cooperation was possible. But the most surprising event occurred on a refugee world where Zephyrian civilians had fled after their empire's collapse. These were former citizens of the most aggressive military power in galactic history, now homeless and desperate. Kethvar, the once proud admiral, sat in a refugee camp made of salvaged materials and failing life support systems. His empire was gone, his fleet destroyed, his life's work reduced to nothing. He expected nothing but hatred from the species his people had oppressed. Then human aid ships arrived. "We're here to help," announced the team leader, a young human engineer. "We have food, medical supplies, and construction equipment." Kethvar stared in disbelief. "You're going to help us? After everything we did to your people and others?" "Everyone deserves basic dignity," the engineer replied simply. "What happened in the past was wrong, but that doesn't mean we should let people suffer now." For the first time in his adult life, Admiral Kethvar broke down and cried. The humans he had dismissed as weak primitives were showing him a strength he had never imagined. The strength to forgive enemies and help those who had tried to destroy them. As months passed, the cooperative reconstruction protocol grew into something unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had fought for millennia began working together on joint projects. Former enemies shared resources and knowledge. The new Galactic Cooperative Council was formed with rotating leadership and shared decision-making. Earth was invited to take a permanent leadership role. But Minjun politely declined. "True leadership means teaching others to lead themselves," he explained to the assembly. "We're here to help, not to rule." On the anniversary of the Technology Exposition, Minjun returned to Earth and visited the Museum of Galactic Cooperation. In the center of the main hall sat the original builder prototype, those simple gray blocks that had once been mocked by the entire galaxy. The placard beneath read, "Simple tools, infinite possibilities," donated by Dr. Park Minjun, who proved that the greatest weapon is the willingness to build rather than destroy. A group of young humans on a field trip gathered around the display, listening as their teacher explained the history. "So these little blocks defeated the entire Zephyrian Empire?" asked one student. "Not exactly," the teacher replied with a smile. "The blocks were just tools. What really changed the galaxy was the idea behind them that strength comes from helping others grow, not from tearing them down." Minjun smiled as he listened to the explanation. He thought about the long journey from mocked engineer to galactic peacemaker. The builder technology had been impressive, but the real prototype had been something much simpler and much more powerful. It had been the idea that true strength comes from lifting others up instead of pushing them down. That cooperation is more powerful than conquest. That the greatest empires are built not on fear, but on hope. As he walked out of the museum into the bright Earth sunlight, Min Jun reflected on the lesson the galaxy had learned. The Zephyrian Empire had seemed invincible because of their powerful weapons and rigid thinking. But they had been defeated by something much more dangerous than any weapon, the simple idea that helping others makes everyone stronger. In the end, the greatest prototype wasn't the builder technology at all. It was the prototype for a better way of living together among the stars.